We are going to hear today about the benefits of ditching gas and switching to electric appliances for cooking, home heating and cooling, and water heating. And you'll hear from people who have recently made the switch themselves and how new tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act can help you save. But first, we have two special guests joining us today, Senators Tina Smith and virtually Senator Martin Heinrich, who are the Senate co-chairs of the Electrification Caucus. The caucus believes electrifying our homes, commercial buildings, and vehicles is one of the most practical actions we can take to address the climate crisis, and we all agree. Senator Tina Smith has represented Minnesota in the Senate since 2017, and in that time, she has worked to advance energy storage, wind and solar power, and electrification. And this Congress, she played a critical role in enacting the Inflation Reduction Act, which aims to reduce U.S. emissions 40% below 2005 levels by 2030, which is a huge achievement. Senator Smith, I personally have appreciated your work to keep the faith alive at the most difficult moments of the campaign, and how you can recognize the organizers and climate activists working to make this possible. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, great. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks to US PIRG and also to Rewiring America. And especially thanks to all of the activists and community organizers. What we need to do is to clean up the electricity sector in every way that we can as fast as we can. Second, we need to electrify everything that we can in our lives, certainly transportation, but also what we use to turn the lights on, what we use to heat our water, what we use to heat and cool our homes. Everything that we can do, we need to electrify with that clean electric power. And then the third thing is that we need to do everything we can to add energy efficiency to our lives in all the ways that we can, because every kilowatt of energy that we don't use is contributing to our overall goals of lowering prices and adapting and addressing and dealing with the climate emergency that we're in. This conversation today is so important. To make this transition to clean energy fast, we need to change things fast. And that means that we need to bring people and businesses and governments, everybody up to speed as fast as we can. And so that's why this conversation is so important. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And once you do this, then you're going to need to go out and tell more people about what this opportunity is so that they too can participate in this incredible opportunity, and we'll be able to hit our goals. I just want to thank you all so much, and I hope you have a terrific conversation.
Thank you so much, Senator Smith, both for making this possible, making these incentives possible that are going to help us use these tools to electrify our homes, and for joining us here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. For folks, we also have a video from Senator Smith's co-chair of the Electrification Caucus, Senator Martin Heinrich from New Mexico.
Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Martin Heinrich, and I'm so excited that Environment America, the U.S. PIRG Education Fund, and Rewiring America are teaming up to host this webinar. I'm working hard to advance policies that support the widespread deployment of highly efficient, fully electric, and climate pollution-free technologies. Our end goal is simple: electrify everything. Electric technologies have already surpassed their fossil fuel-powered alternatives in terms of both efficiency and performance. These machines are the tools that will allow each of us to do our part to solve the climate crisis. And people are hungry for that. As more of us electrify our homes, we will power our appliances with clean and carbon pollution-free electric power generation. This shift will add up one heat pump at a time to massive reductions in our climate warming emissions. Switching to electric home appliances also creates major health benefits by replacing machines that contaminate our indoor air with dangerous compounds and pollutants. That means fewer children with asthma and fewer seniors with breathing problems. Perhaps most importantly for many families, these machines are much more efficient and less expensive to operate than their fossil fuel predecessors. That means that once we install them, electric appliances can help families realize significant savings on their monthly energy bills. I've experienced this firsthand in the savings on my utility bills after I started installing electric appliances like heat pump water heat pump water heaters in my own home. Electric appliances also reduce our nation's current dependence on fossil fuels that are harming more than just the health of our planet. Fossil energy sources like oil and gas are also propping up malign foreign regimes like Vladimir Putin in Russia. And reliance in energy from these hostile regimes is leading directly to price shocks and costly inflation. When I first started working on this issue, it was obvious that electric appliances offered substantial benefits to families. But it was also clear that it was mainly wealthier households that were going electric. That's why I introduced legislation to level the upfront costs of installing these appliances for low and moderate income families. I hope that what you learned today will inspire you to keep taking concrete steps to build a cleaner, stronger, and more resilient future. Thank you.
So next, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Casal, Environment Campaigns Director with US PIRG Education Fund, to speak about the health benefits of switching away from gas stoves. Matt.
Thanks, Lisa. Let me see if I can pull up some slides here. Okay. Does that look good?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I am not a video of Senator Heinrich, unfortunately. But while we try to figure that out, I will happily talk to you about electric cooking. Excited to hear Senator Smith talk about induction stoves and hear more and more them becoming mainstream. I want to talk today a little bit about why it's so important. My name is Matt Casal. I'm the Environment Campaigns Director for US PIRG Education Fund. I'm really excited. Thanks everyone for joining today. So electrifying your kitchen might not be your first thought when you're thinking about electrifying your home and all of the appliances that you have, but it is an important one. It's one that's really not that hard to do, and one that could provide critical health benefits for your family. And the reason why it could provide those critical health benefits, what's the problem? People love their gas stoves, but there's a hidden danger seeping out of them, and that's air pollution. Cooking with gas can produce air pollution levels indoors that would exceed EPA's outdoor health-based standards. So if it's bad for you outdoors, you can imagine even worse indoors. And so that means that doing something as simple and innocuous as making a meal for your family can release pollutants into our homes. Some studies show lead to the development of asthma, especially in children, and worsen symptoms for those with pre-existing respiratory illnesses, including childhood asthma. One report even compared the effects of using gas stoves around kids unvented to those of secondhand smoke exposure. And then, of course, as long as we keep our stoves hooked up to the gas lines, we're going to be extracting, transporting, and burning methane gas, which is a major contributor to climate change. So ultimately, what we want to do, right, is shift our cooking away from gas appliances to electric or induction. But I like to keep this up here to say, don't panic if you have a gas stove in your home. You don't need to run over there right now and pull it out of the wall. There are steps that you can take to protect your family, short of ripping it out of your kitchen, but these are not perfect solutions. And the next time you're in the market for a stove, I would consider going electric or induction. But here are just some tips if you do have a gas stove on how to minimize the indoor air pollution that you're experiencing as a result of your gas stove. Again, it's not a perfect solution and it doesn't solve the climate problem with using methane gas, but this can help protect you in your home. But ultimately, we shouldn't have to go to all these lengths just to make sure that a product that we've purchased legally and installed correctly and are using as they tell us to use don't pollute our inside our homes and make us sick. So this is this slide, it says policy solutions. It's really the bigger, broader changes we need to protect people from indoor air pollution and move our society off methane gas as a way to cook in our homes. And you can see some of the policy solutions up here that are all sort of pick and choose and both which solutions you want to start to try and put into effect, but then also where you do it. Indoor air quality and ventilation standards, warning labels, and consumer education, incentives and rebates. All of these are things that can be done at the federal level, can also be done at state, local levels, can also push corporations, companies, retailers, manufacturers to adopt some of these practices voluntarily. So while we're getting to the point where we can phase out all new gas hookups, we can, all new installed stoves at some point will hopefully be electric or induction. But up to that point, there are all of these policy solutions we can put into place at different levels of government in order to protect people. None of this is easy. I think, as we've seen, this trying to pass the Inflation Reduction Act and other good policies around building electrification, the gas industry is powerful, well connected. I think people's perceptions of gas and gas stoves particularly are still in a place where we don't really realize how bad that they are. And so in all of what we're doing, we want to make sure that we're spreading the word about what are the actual risks of using a gas stove in your home, both the health risks, the safety risks, and then the climate risks. And then ultimately, we want to pivot, right, to, but even better, there's this great solution. We have options, and they're really good options to move off of gas stoves. I have an electric stove in my house, and I love it. It has a quick boil feature. I have 2 young daughters. One is 2.5 and one is 5. They love mac and cheese. And I have to tell you, when I'm being heckled by a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old about, getting their mac and cheese on the table faster, it's nice to be able to boil water quick, right? The last thing they want to hear is, oh, I'm still waiting for the water to boil. And then, electric cooking sort of has gotten a bad rap in the past. It's not as good as cooking on gas. The coils are terrible, that sort of stuff. But electric cooking has come a long way, and induction cooking is the future here today. Induction technology is cool, it's exciting, it's fast, efficient, and pollution-free, even faster than my flat top electric stove. Induction cooktops use magnetism to heat metal cookware. So when you turn on an induction stove or the cooktop on, electric currents underneath a smooth cooking surface create a magnetic current within the cookware being used. The direct transfer of energy results in an instant and efficient heating. They're faster than both gas and traditional electric coil cooktops. Some models can boil that pot of water in just 2 minutes. Induction also results in precise control and consistent levels of heat. And the appliance responds immediately to changes in temperatures by adjusting the strength of the electric currents. So sometimes you'll hear real chefs use gas. We put together a whole list of quotes from some really impressive chefs who swear by induction. This really is a really superior cooking tool that allows you to move off of gas. Some things to know when switching to electric or induction cooking. You may need to do some electrical work in your kitchen if you don't already have the outlets. So that's a consideration. And then while traditional electric stoves are often cheaper than their gas counterparts, the new versions in the induction cooktops can be more expensive than comparable gas counterparts, although you can find sort of options at every level of the spectrum. But price certainly will be a consideration.
Thanks so much, Matt. I know I would love to swap out my stove for one that can boil pasta in just a couple minutes. That was great to hear. Next up, I want to turn it over to Joel with Rewiring America to talk about heat pumps and heat pump water heaters.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully I'm sharing my screen here. Can you see that? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, hey, I'm Joel from Rewiring America, and I'm going to talk about how to help you electrify everything in your home. we have done a lot of work at Rewiring America to try and spread the word. And there are a couple of references that are worth downloading from us. The first is this guide, Electrify Everything in Your Home, which is a little dense, but tries to give some background on all of the things that you could electrify, as well as advice for how to work with your contractors. I just want to reiterate also what Senator Smith was saying. There's actually great news about the climate crisis. We have a solution if we electrify everything and stop burning fossil fuels and then power everything from clean, renewable electricity. We will solve a large chunk of the climate problem. And we need everybody to replace the appliances and things in their own home, as well as greening the grid. But there's also great news in that if we do this, if we electrify everything, because the way we currently do everything is so incredibly inefficient, from generating electricity in fossil fueled power plants to running our cars on gasoline, we will actually reduce the amount of energy that we need to power everything and keep pretty much our current way of life, but we won't have any of the emissions that are causing climate change. So that's also great news. This Go Electric guide and the Electrify Everything in Your Home guide are set up so that as you go and make your plan, you can refer back to the Electrify Everything in Your Home guide to see what it is you have to do to replace each of these appliances. And so for this talk, I'm going to be talking specifically about the heat pump for heating and cooling and the heat pump for heating your water. So here's the overview of those. And again, you can find a lot of this in the Electrify Everything in Your Home guide. It turns out that you probably already have a heat pump in your house, and it is your refrigerator. And the way your refrigerator works is by essentially pumping heat out of the inside of your fridge and into your kitchen. And you don't have to worry about exactly how this works, but just know that it's essentially creating a difference in temperature between the regular kitchen and the inside of the fridge. And if the power went out, the fridge would warm up until it hit room temperature. You might also have another heat pump in your house already. An air conditioner is also a heat pump where it's pumping heat out of your room and to the outside of the building. And a heat pump is essentially just an air conditioner that can switch directions. And instead of pumping heat out to make it cooler, it can pump heat in to make it warmer. And it can do this even on very cold days, because even freezing cold air has heat in it. It sounds counterintuitive, but it has heat that can be pumped into your house for making it warm. There's lots of different types of heat pumps. Two main ones to be aware of are the mini split heat pump. If anybody thinks of heat pumps at all, it's probably, if you can see my cursor here, the one, this high wall mount one. But some people don't like the way they look. I don't mind the way they look personally, but there are lots of other options. You can also get ones that go up into your ceiling. You can get ones that go on the low wall, kind of like a radiator. You can even get a multi-room one that's called a ducted mini split. And again, this is all covered in the guide. And then if you have central air conditioning or a central furnace, they also have a central heat pump that can essentially replace the air conditioner and then just pump heat and use those same ducts. Okay, somebody in the chat had asked about what options there are, or what's the best device out there. There's a guide from this group called Redwood Energy. It's a very nice retrofit guide that lists lots of products available for all of these different components, and that's worth checking out too. And I'll try and put that in the chat after I'm done talking. Again, I lost my chat window on somewhere on my screen here. Okay, so why are heat pumps so great? If you don't know already, a natural gas furnace might be able to convert 80% of the energy from the natural gas into the heating of your house. More efficient ones might be able to do higher, but let's say 80% for the sake of argument. If you got an electric resistance heater, like a plug-in space heater, or you have electric baseboard heating, it can do potentially 100% of the electrical energy coming in can be converted into heat. But because heat pumps are just pumping heat from one space to another space, either inside or outside, depending on the direction it's moving, if you put in, let's say, 1 unit worth of electricity, it can pump 3 units worth of heat and essentially get 400% of the energy that you output as heat. And so these are like magical devices that can be 4 times more efficient or higher than comparable resistance or gas heating options. Okay, so if you want to get a heat pump, the first thing you should probably do is get a home energy audit with a blower door test, where someone will come to your house and test for air leaks in your house and maybe use one of these infrared cameras to look for ways that heat is escaping from your house. You can check with your utility. This could be free or subsidized by them. And from there, you can also do the weatherization, which means, sealing air leaks and things like that, as well as adding more insulation. Advice, I heard this from a contractor. He said, if you're going to look for a contractor, the first thing you should do is see if one of your neighbors has a heat pump and ask for recommendations on who they use to do the installation. But if you're going to just start cold calling contractors, you can ask them if they're going to do what's called a manual J, which is essentially a calculation to figure out how big your heat pump should be based on your climate and how many windows you have and which direction your house is facing. Whether they'll do room by room airflow analysis and what kinds of, they're called inverter driven heat pumps they sell. And based on the answer, if they can answer all three of these questions, that's great. They're a good candidate for them to come and give you an evaluation and a quote. And if they can't answer it, or they try and discourage you from buying a heat pump, say thank you and hang up and call the next one. And this will also send that non-friendly contractor, non-heat pump friendly contractor, I should say, a market signal that people are interested in heat pumps and that this is coming down the pipe. Okay, so that's a summary for heat pumps. And then for water heaters, heat pump water heaters are basically they're heat pumps on top of water tanks that pump heat from the surroundings, whether it's your basement or your garage, out of the air and into the water. And these things are pretty great. Not only are they still multiple times more efficient than their fossil fueled counterparts, but if you have they also air condition the room. So it will help dehumidify the room. And that's good for a lot of people in their basement or their garage. And there's also no exhaust from the burning. So you have more flexibility in where you put these heat pump water heaters. And if you're doing electrical work, let's say Matt was talking about getting an electric stove, and you have to wire up your kitchen for that electric stove, you can also have the electrician install a circuit for a 240 volt heat pump. And there are also regular 120 volt wall outlet versions that are just now coming onto the market. So that's another thing to consider. And then there, just for the sake of completeness, there are also these split heat pumps where you have the tank inside and the heat pump unit outside. And these are great for cold climates. They tend to be more expensive, but again, it's just something to know about.
Thank you so much, Joel. And I want to point people towards the chat where we've been sharing some of these resources that Joel and Matt discussed. So we've shared here US PIRG Education Fund's Guide to Induction Stoves, Rewiring America's Guide to the Inflation Reduction Act and their calculator to figure out how much you can save by making these upgrades, as well as their Electrify Everything in Your Home guide. We are now going to spend some time hearing from people who have made these switches themselves in their own homes. We have multiple consumers on this call from different states: Massachusetts, New Jersey, California, Texas. I see a lot of good questions in the Q&A, but let me kick it off with a question for Susan, or actually a question for Heather Sheldon first, which is, why did you decide to get a heat pump and what factored into your decision to do that?
Yeah, hi. So I'm in Western Massachusetts, where we get quite cold winters here. We have both electric heat pump hot water heater, and we heat our house entirely with heat pumps. We wanted to go all electric for many reasons, but I really love the controllability of a mini split system. So in our house, we have 7 different heads. So we have four bedrooms, and each bedroom has its own head. So we can only heat rooms that we're in at any given time. And I have a ton of control over, I can, if nobody's going to be in that room, I just turn the heat way down. And at night, I can turn the kitchen way down, I can turn the living room way down, and we're not overheating our house. And then it's just way more efficient in general.
That's great. And then Luke, I understand you have a heat pump water heater, different appliance, somewhat different climate. Can you tell us about what led you to make that decision?
Yeah, my gas water heater broke and I needed a new one. I remember some 8 years ago, my gas water heater broke and I needed to replace it, I called, water heater company and, begged them to give me an efficient option. And they just were like, no, you don't want to do that. And just completely, dissuaded me from, choosing a more efficient option. So we got, and we needed hot water, right? And so was kind of forced into this decision. And so this time, this past summer, I was like, I'm not going to let this happen, even if we have to wait a few days or longer to have hot water. And had to make several calls, before I found somebody that was, excited to sell me a heat pump water heater. And, and we wanted to do that, for the same reason, wanting to, fully electrify our home. My thought had been we would switch the gas stove first, but it's the water heater broke, so we had to prioritize that, and we've been really happy with it. And I saw, looking at my gas bill, the gas use in our house just plummeted, I think from like 1,600 cubic feet to 400 cubic feet in just a span of a month. So that's pretty exciting. That shows me that I still have some gas to get rid of, with the stove. So that's next. But we've been really happy with it so far. I think I'd heard some concerns about, like, will it provide enough hot water for you when you need it? And we've had no problem, always had plenty of hot water, and the benefit of a cooler garage during a hot Texas summer has been also nice.
That's great. And I know I kind of shared your thought of like, oh gosh, it's just the water heater. You're going to see that much of a drop in the gas usage. So that's great to hear. I am curious from some of the other folks on the call who have switched to either heat pumps or heat pump water heaters, Susan, Heather, Emily. Have you also seen other benefits since making those switch, including, do you see changes in your utility bills? Are there other things you've noticed?
So one of the real benefits, going back to the cooling temperatures, the heat pump hot water heater that we have both heat pump for space heating, and then also for the hot water. And it's amazing the amount of dehumidification that also occurs with that heat pump hot water heater. So in New Jersey, a lot of times basements can be a little damp. And one of the great things about having the heat pump hot water heater in the basement is that it is completely dry down there. It's fantastic.
Interesting. Emily, I'm curious for you how you went about figuring out the kind of size and type of system that you wanted, and then finding a contractor to get it installed.
So I live in Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area. We have very mild summers and very mild winters. We didn't have air at all, and we had a gas heater in our home that we didn't turn on all of that often. The reason we were personally motivated to go electric, beyond like the self-interested reason, was because of the increasing wildfire and smoke seasons that we're experiencing in Northern California. So in particular, I'm trying to remember, it was maybe, I think 2 years ago, when we had a period of time where it was during COVID, we had a heat wave and we had really unhealthy air outdoors, and our family was stuck indoors sweating, and not even literally being able to leave our home. And we decided we needed the security of getting some air. And so that's what led us to then start to look into this more and more. We ended up finding a contractor who was interested in home electrification through networking and referrals through friends. I wish I had a better tip for how to find those contractors. I do think it's important to find a contractor who's kind of aligned with your vision, because there are definitely some additional hoops to go through. And then we just worked with him to figure out the size that we need. We actually have solar, and we ended up doing a battery too, because there's also grid, California is experiencing some grid unreliability, but we don't have an electric car yet. So we've just focused on our home to date, unlike Joel's recommendation. Sorry, Joel.
I might amend Joel's recommendation too. Good to start with that, but wherever you are ready to get started is a great place to start exploring some of these technologies. Thanks, Emily. I'm curious too, for all the folks that have switched to heat pumps, does it actually keep your house warm in the winter and cool in the summer? Has performance been what you hoped it would be?
I will say performance has been amazing. And I really echo Emily's point on the fact that it does take a little bit to find a contractor. So we made the switch in the process of completely renovating a 1908 rear hull Colonial, which I don't recommend doing through the middle of COVID. But we had to speak with at least 3 HVAC companies to find someone who was willing to actually electrify the home. And then we had to actually hire somebody outside of actually the third one who was willing to do it, to do all of the manual J and manual S calculations to make sure that both the HVAC contractor and our general contractor were actually comfortable that the unit would perform. And it has really met or exceeded everybody's expectations. And so I hope that through the process that we went through, now both the HVAC contractor and our general contractor will be more willing to listen to other customers who may say this is what they want, but perhaps not be as strident in demanding electrification of space heating and water heating. So it does take a little bit of work, but the performance has really been phenomenal.
I wanted to add, in Western Massachusetts, where we are, we have not run into problems finding contractors. We have a lot of really experienced people with these systems, and I was able to get 3 quotes, all from very knowledgeable people in a very short amount of time. And I was even able to pick the one that I felt, was able to meet my vision for some of the aesthetics. We were able to run the line sets and stuff. I don't know how it connects from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit. Sometimes people want to put that on the outside of the house. The one guy I selected was really willing to work with me to bury those inside closets and get the condensate out of the building in a way that, made them seamless into our existing late 60s house. As far as performance goes in Western Massachusetts, we're definitely very heat dominated. When I look at our energy usage, our January electric bill is the same as the other 10 months combined. The 2 months of January, February use as much electricity as the whole rest of the year. So it's pretty amazing how the winter dominates our energy usage here. That said, we only, when I worked with the MEP people, I deliberately had them undersize it ever so slightly. If we, when you get into extreme cold, the heat pumps work less efficiently. Not that they still don't work more efficiently than almost anything else, but compared to themselves, you get down to -10 and they're not performing as well. So we did leave in, the house was an electric heated, resistance heated home before. So we left a few of those units in so I could turn those and know, because I could feel it, that the heat pumps weren't keeping up, leave those on when we have an overnight low of -20, -10. But we've had great luck finding folks here. So depending where you are, you might not be a process. So don't be too discouraged.
Roger that. Great. And then we have a question from Phil for Luke Metzger. Is the heat pump water heater noisier than your old gas unit?
I can't hear it. It's in our garage, which is literally just right behind this wall. And I had heard, some concerns of like, oh, it's really noisy. You want to make sure it's far away, but I can't hear it at all. And, if you open the door, it's like a gentle humming, in the garage, but, I find it pleasant actually.
Great. Probably better than the gentle humming of mosquitoes we have here in DC much of the year. Great. And then we have questions from a number of people in the audience about geothermal heat pumps. I'm wondering, maybe Joel, if you have anything that you can share about those versus the more common air source heat pumps.
Sure.
Resources to people.
Yeah, sure. Geothermal or ground source heat pumps. We like them, but Rewiring America, we've sort of focused more on air source heat pumps because A, they've gotten a lot better in recent years, and B, they're a lot cheaper to install because you don't have to do all of the groundwork. And we're trying to move the market. And so, if you have a ground source heat pump or you have a lot of land and are interested and on some cash and are interested in a ground source heat pump, get some quotes. And they are eligible for rebates and discounts. We just focus more on air source because it's going to be the correct solution or the easier and cheaper solution for a lot of people.
Great. Then I'd love to ask some questions on gas stoves too, and switching to electric and induction stoves. For people on the call that have made the switch, do you have a brand that you like? How did you wind up choosing your particular stove?
We have the GE Cafe, and we chose to actually go with it. There's a double oven, which has just been a nice, honestly, it doesn't have to do with it. It's just been really nice to actually be able to, so people know, I think already, induction stove that's cooktop heats water so fast. That's just such a nice benefit. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I love that I feel very safe at this point, letting my kids cook on the stove as long as I'm, they obviously still have hot food and hot pans, but the fact that there's not a gas flame has made me a lot more comfortable letting my kids cook. And then we like having the double oven as well for us. We often are just trying to heat up or cook one thing, and it's just a smaller space that also heats up more efficiently, or to have honestly 2 different, if we need to heat up things at 2 different temperatures, that gives us the option too. So our experience has been great so far.
Great. And Susan, I know you have a induction stove as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you chose your stove and what benefits you've seen?
Well, yeah, the biggest driver was I got a notification on my phone that during the summer, when I'm not using much gas, that my gas bill was higher than normal. And being kind of nerdy, I looked at the back end of my bill and, ooh, what a nice surprise. I had $100 per month surcharge on my gas bill for weatherization. In other words, we've amortized our winter storm and everyone gets to pay that. And since I had ice in my sink and didn't have the benefit of that gas during the winter storm, let's just kindly say that I was irritated. So I started looking at all the gas stuff I had in my house. I do already have a double induction stove, but I had a gas cooktop, and I have an older home, not 1905, but 1940. And so it wasn't as easy as I thought, mainly because the physical hole on my countertop for the gas stove was much smaller than what you need for electric. So we had to do some carpentry. And then the wiring on my 1945 home wasn't quite adequate either. So we had to do a little bit of electrical work. I ended up with a KitchenAid just because my other appliances are all KitchenAid, and I've had really good luck with it. My other little surprise, and it's an okay surprise, was that I had this really lovely Cephalon cookware set that's all aluminum. My kids were thrilled with my pan donation to their relative kitchens because I had to completely rework my my pans. But I've found new pans. I absolutely love having almost instantaneously warm water for pasta, and it's really actually good for stir fry as well. It cooks pretty quickly and pretty hot. And so overall, it's been a very positive experience. With my wiring and my carpentry, though, my installation cost almost as much as the equipment itself. And then there was the pan thing. So I've got a good Christmas list going. But I think it was the right thing to do. Next on my list is my water heater and my furnace, which is, we'll get there. One thing at a time.
One thing at a time, indeed. I'm curious for other people that have gotten induction stoves, maybe Matt or others. Did you have any surprises in making the switch? Did you have to do anything with your pans or electrical or surprise benefits as well?
It was very easy for me. The biggest surprise was how fast it boils water. is a good surprise.
And what types of pans do you typically use with your induction stove?
Well, I have an electric, a flat top, and so I didn't have to switch out any pans. But I do know that if you're thinking about an induction, if you've got a magnet on your fridge, you can test out.
Take it with you to pans.
Yeah, right. Test it. If the magnet sticks to your pans, then you can use it. And most pans will work, but in our induction guide, we have a discussion on what kind of pans and how to know.
Good tip. I want to ask a question from Jillian, who appreciates hearing from you all, as do I, and is wondering, for anybody on the call here, what reservations did you have about making the switch for any of these appliances, and how did you overcome those? And I'd like to respond to that.
I will say I had absolutely none. I am leading the City of Dallas climate plan. To me, it was a matter of walking the talk. Like Emily, I have solar. I'm actually getting a battery installed today because during that same winter storm, I learned that solar without that battery doesn't do much. Because like Emily, I needed to be able to be grid sufficient myself. So it's a matter of walking the talk relative to what I'm trying to help our community to do.
For us, it was really important to electrify everything. And a lot of it is because, for example, your gas appliance is going to become less and less efficient over time with use. And so it's actually going to become more and more polluting, versus your electric appliance is going to become better and better for the environment as we continue to green up our grid. And so anytime that we were thinking about what we needed to do to really be part of the solution, that was part of it. The only hesitation of any of the appliances that we have, because we've completely electrified the house, so we do all of our space heating, cooking, hot water, and drying actually through electricity. So we also have a heat pump dryer, and that was the only one that I wasn't as sure about. We have a Miele. I love it. It's great. And really the way that I got across or through any sort of reservation was just thinking about really how much better that would be. And the great thing is that it plugs into a standard plug. So I know that there was a question in the chat or on the Q&A about plugs as well. You can get, especially clothes dryers, I know that have just a standard plug into a standard outlet. And now Rheem does make a heat pump hot water heater that also is just a standard electrical outlet. So not all of these appliances that we're talking about actually do require a lot of electrical work. You just have to be cognizant of the one that you choose.
Thanks, Heather. I want to do one last kind of round the horn with our great panelists here of any advice that you have for people looking to make the switch to an electric stove or heat pump water heater. And can we start with Luke?
Yeah, I think you just making sure that you don't take no for an answer, and keep making calls if the first person doesn't know what you're talking about or thinks you're crazy. We don't think you're crazy. Lots of this is legit. This is proven technology. It's good for the planet. It'll save you money in the long run. So keep at it.
Great. We're not crazy. Susan, how about you?
So what I have taken is a stepwise approach. I invested in solar, took the savings from solar to invest in EV, took the savings from EV to get the charger, used the savings from the charger to, I had thought, get a heat pump, but I still don't have a proposal on it. But then I did the cooktop instead. So I'm using the rebates and trying to kind of pay myself forward, if you will, with energy savings over time. I did actually, the very first thing I did was install a radiant barrier in my attic. So we went for energy savings first, and then started using the savings to kind of escalate my electrification process.
I love that. We can call it the Susan plan. That's great. Heather, how about you?
I guess that's me, Heather. I'd like to build on what Susan was just saying when it came to our solar panels on our roof, actually. I know it's a little off topic for this, but, you know, when I was saying before that we had great HVAC folks here that were all on board with heat pumps for heating, I found that when I went to go do our solar panels, the people I were talking with were rather skeptical about our site because we were fairly wooded. It didn't have great orientation. And they're like, oh, you're only going to get a 15-year payback. And I'm like, only? That's great.
That's great. Heather, we're losing you a little bit, but we heard 15-year payback.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent.
Because the guy down the street was getting it. It still made a ton of sense for me.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and
Great. Okay. Heather Sheldon, we're losing you a little bit, but thank you for sharing. And let's go to Heather Payne.
I would really just echo what Luke said. It's in many places, it still is a process. There still are kinks in permitting and everything else that you may need to work through, but it is definitely worth it given how long these appliances last. And so every single time one of these appliances gets installed that's natural gas, that just extends the requirements for not only that house and that particular person, but for us to maintain that entire natural gas system. And that's going to have negative implications for equity and the planet that we can't even go on in this call. So it really is a ripple effect, and we can be part of that positive movement by being, as Luke said, not crazy and not taking no for an answer.
Thanks. Matt Casal, final words of advice from you.
Just as other people have said, it's a process. There are a lot of things, and these are big purchases. These are not everyday purchases, right? So understanding that it's a process, we have a plan for our house and we're working through it, and it's not going to happen overnight. But once you start making that plan and you start realizing some of the cost savings as you do it, things start to fall into place. And then if you're a renter, obviously this is a whole other issue and makes things more difficult. If you have a gas stove, you can't get your landlord to install proper ventilation or switch out the gas stove. Portable induction cooktops are not that expensive. They work great. You can plug them into the wall. You can reduce your gas use. And then of course, then it's important to push for that policy change, right? And those broader societal changes that make it so that, we're not trapped in a situation where we're stuck with gas.
Amen. And Emily, any parting words of advice?
Well, I just saw a comment from Anthony in the chat that I wanted to echo, which is, of all this, actually figuring out how to make your home like ceiling and insulation is a really good first step. Before we did any of this, we actually insulated our floors underneath, which were not insulated at all before. And I was amazed at how much of a difference that made in our home. And again, I live in a mild climate, so I don't experience the really harsh winters, but that I don't want to ignore that piece of the equation too.
Great. Thanks everybody who's joined us here and for sharing your experience. We will share out with all of you who listen in today. Thank you, all of the resources that have been shared, as well as the recording for this. And we'll do, I know there's many, many more questions flooding into, so we'll do our best to keep getting those answered as we go forward. We were not able to find a way to play the video from Senator Heinrich, but Celeste has just shared it here in the chat. Please go watch it. He was, like Senator Tina Smith, a huge part of making it possible for us to use these new tax incentives to electrify our homes and make a big impact on climate. So take a minute to watch that, and we'll be sharing it out along with all the resources today. Again, want to thank everybody for joining us. Best of luck as you seek to electrify your home, and looking forward to continuing to be a resource as you take that journey.